Now that we've covered frame-by-frame animations, we're going to move on to another feature that's unique to paintings, which is the Duplicates Tweak tab. I'm just going to start by going into paint mode here. I'm going to select a nice medium molecule pink to get started. For starting our painting, I'm going to make one just little stamp down for the I'm calling it an anchor point. It's actually a starting point for the painting. And that can actually be deleted later and the starting point will still look the same. So I've got that one little stamp right there, and then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to sort of just make like this arrow shape. And then I made that very much out of alignment. I could have done that with the surface snapper grid if I wanted to make it really tidy. Now I'm going to do another painting, and I will choose a contrasting color. And with this one, I'm going to make a stamp thing up here, and then I'm going to make an arrow in pretty much the same way as before. So in each of these, the little free-floating square is the first stroke on the painting. And if I go into here and I do rotational duplicates in all directions, all the arrows are pointing outward, because that little stamp that's the start of the painting, that's always going to be the center of the rotational duplicates. And if we turn that off when we do it all in a line, or we do it on a plane, it's all orienting from that starting point. If we go over to here where the starting point was at the top of the arrow, now it's the opposite. All the arrows are pointing in. And same thing if it's all on, oops, I have both selected at once. If it's all on a plane and etc., that doesn't really matter because that's not affecting the orientation of the shape. That always just keeps it upright. So it's really about the rotational duplicates. If I scope in here and I delete that first stroke, it doesn't actually change anything. And if I go in here and I take this first stroke and I move it way over to the side, it still doesn't change anything. It remembers where the first stroke was initially placed, and that's why it doesn't really matter what that brush stroke is, or if you want to even see it later, because you can just take it away, you can delete it, but it might matter to have it on the grid for the sake of aligning this painting with other paintings later on. So, getting on with how to paint things specifically for making duplicates, if I were to take these two and group them together, now when I open the tab, I have a tab for the groups. Sorry, when I open the tweak menu, it's for the whole group, it's not for the individual paintings, and so there's no duplicate menu. I can scope into the group, and I can still make duplicates of each individual painting, but it's only going to do that one painting. It's not going to affect the whole thing. If I merge the two paintings, now I have a tab to duplicate both of these paintings as one. And this is where the merge tool, the merge function rather, is actually very useful, because as we talked about, grouping and merging are extremely different. You can ungroup, but you can't unmerge, and when you do merge two paintings, it can drive the thermometer up. However, if you merge the paintings and then use duplicates instead of cloning, you're keeping your graphics thermometer very low. So if I merge these, sorry, let me back up. I'll make a clone so that we have two copies here of this very simple painting. So we'll have those as a group, and we'll have these merged. And now we can do a whole bunch of copies, up to 100. And that is not affecting the thermometer. This is 3 individual paintings. Each one is unique. So rather than just making a painting and cloning it 3 times, I made 3 individual paintings. That's how many paintings it took just making these scribbles to reach 2% on the graphics thermometer. Then I took that group of 3 paintings, I took those 3 paintings and grouped them, which is not the same as merging them, just creating a group out of them. I took that group and cloned it 100 times, and the graphics thermometer went up to 26%. Then I took that group of 3 paintings and merged them together into one, and because we were only at 2% on the graphics thermometer, that merge didn't cost a whole lot. But when I then used the duplicate function instead of the clone function, it still is at 2%. And that's the really cool thing about duplicates. However, there is that little downside, which is that it does this according to its own sort of preset algorithm. And you can open the tweak menu on any of these and you're still dealing with the original one. And so now if I turn off the duplicates, oops, that was the wrong one. If I turn off the duplicates, now we're back to just the original instance of it. So up to 100 copies through the duplicates tab of a painting, but it can only be one painting, it can't be a group of paintings. If I take this painting and I start making clones of it, like 100 times over, so I've made 1 clone, so that's 2 copies. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now those are all grouped together as 1. And now if I go, oops, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, the gameplay thermometer went up. The graphics thermometer hasn't gone up much because this is such a simple painting. But believe me, I've done some experiments, and if you have a complex painting that actually looks nice, your graphics thermometer is going up also when you do those duplicates. But if you... Sorry. This is clones. Your graphics thermometer and your gameplay thermometer will go up when you do clones. The thermometers will not go up when you use the duplicates tab. So I'm just going to back up because we don't need all of those in the level right now. Now, there are some times when duplicates are just not going to work out for what you're trying to do. And I'm just going to delete these and do a different type of an example. I'm going to start another new painting here. And I'm going to use the rule flex. And this time I'm actually going to turn on the grid. And I'm just going to make one simple straight line. And now the grid can be turned back off. Now, if I go in here and I make a bunch of duplicates on a line and I bunch them really closely together, I could use that for something like a curtain, maybe. Because they're bunched so close together and it's looking solid. But if I start taking the opacity down a whole lot, you can really see that it's a tighter cluster right here, and at the edge it's a little thinner at the middle. And so for that reason, I've found when I'm doing something like a water effect, I actually don't like the duplicates for that because it gets a little, when you have this, you get these thick patches and thin patches when you change the opacity. I'm going to move on just quickly here to the physical effect and wind strength. So that would be fine to simulate something like a fabric curtain because, well, I didn't orient it really greatly there, but it's pretty opaque and you get that nice sort of breezy effect. If we turn that off and instead go back to something that would be more like a watery effect, where it's a little bit translucent, or sorry, low opacity, and then you could do something like adding flow and waves, and when we play it we see that, but it's not looking really great because of that bunching action of the duplicates. And so sometimes you need to just clone, even though it takes up a little more space on the thermometer, to get the effects that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to delete this and talk a little bit more about painting things specifically with the intention of using the duplicate tool, or sorry, the duplicates tab in the tweak menu. So, as I went over previously, when you're scoped into a painting, you can't do multiple clones. You can only clone individual brush strokes. So, it might be really fun and easy to make, let's say, a flower shape with a kaleidoscope. Just sort of start a spot there, and then, or a star. We'll call that a flower for right now. But if I want to make duplicates of it, that's fine, it's just that one. But if I wanted to have duplicates where I had several of them at different scales, I would have to do one of two things. I could take this and clone it and rescale it down smaller, and then I could group these together and merge them, and I would be able to make duplicates, but that is not the best way to do it for the thermometer. So I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to turn off the kaleidoscope. Oops. The best way for the thermometer is to do all of your cloning while you're scoped in here, and that's not always going to be the easiest way as a creator, so it's important to sort of decide where to find your own balance of what's going to work for you. You can use something like the Surface Snap tool to make it a little easier to line things up here. And so I'm going to just try and draw a flower sort of freehand and do it all in one brush stroke, and I would do this a lot better with the moves. And I'll get into some other techniques in another tutorial. But this is all one stroke. Let's just call that a flower. And now I can grab it and move it around all as one, and I'm still scoped into the painting. And now I can take that and duplicate it, and I can make it a little smaller, and duplicate it again, and change the orientation maybe on these, so that it's a little more dynamic looking. And scope out, and now this is all one painting. And now, if I go in here, and I do on a plane, and I spread them out, you know, if I had taken the time to draw stems and leaves on those flowers, I would have a field of flowers here at the cost of one little painting, which is very good for the thermometer. And you can spend a little bit more time and get something pretty nice there. Okay, so another thing to talk about with painting and the start point of a painting, this is something that I discovered while making a palm tree and making leaves that blow in the breeze. So I'll just grab a green, and we'll make a sort of a leaf shape. And actually, I'm going to leave the Surface Snap on right now, and I'm just going to show, if you make a leaf, we already know that it's often best for duplicates to try and use all one brush stroke. So I'm going to try and make a leaf with one stroke by just sort of going up one side and the other, and there's a leaf. And now we'll, oops, I grabbed the wrong thing there. We'll pick this up and sort of put it at an angle. So the start of it was down here, and then I just went back and forth. I'm going to go in here and turn on the wind effect. And it's blowing in a really kind of a weird, awkward way, because I went up to the end and then I went down and back up again, and so that's all one stroke, and it follows like the direction of the movement, and so it doesn't look anything like a leaf once it's blowing in the wind. So if we go back in here and actually just delete that and start again, if you make just one stroke and then while scoped in, clone that stroke, oops, and scale it down a little bit. And then you can do a multi-clone. Somehow I got a little bit out of alignment, but that's okay. And because of it having a curve, it's not actually going to really work on the other side. It would have been better to do it straight, but we'll just do it up the one side for right now. And now everything is kind of blowing in unison, and I can change... Oops. Let me lift this up off of the floor a little bit. I can change the direction of the wind strength. Keep grabbing the wrong thing because I'm pressing the wrong button. And now it's all kind of blowing in unison. So when you're making things for the duplicates tab, you want to try and use as few gestures as possible when you are going to want to clone things. But when you're making things for specifically to use with physical wind, you oftentimes are going to want to make a small stroke and then clone it a lot of times for that consistency. Just like we did with the curtain. That was just one stroke and actually using duplicates. So now if I turn this on in all directions, I have this sort of gyrating, pulsing thing. This is one example where duplicates are not always going to work the best, because in this case you need a little bit more control. And so I'm going to turn off the duplicates here, and instead I'm going to clone. Oops. I'm going to make a few copies and go in different directions. And actually, for the purpose of something like a palm tree, you want that to blow downwards, because we want to sort of create a dangling effect. So instead of using the duplicates tab, I'm going to clone, which is a little bit more on the thermometer, but because these are all exact copies of each other, it's not going to cost all that much. If I went and started making them unique, then we'd have a little bit of a problem. But for something like this, when it comes to wind direction and also rotational duplicates, it's really important to know where the starting point is. And so putting down sort of a marker when you get started can be very helpful. You can also use the duplicates tweak on frame-by-frame animation. So if we have our butterfly flapping here and open up the tweak menu to duplicates, and we go positional around camera, we now have flapping butterflies anywhere that the camera goes in the level. And this is at no extra cost to the thermometer. And these butterflies, of course, are not moving, but if you wanted to add a few extra frames and actually make them travel or anything like that, you could do all sorts of things with this. So now that we've covered duplicates and when you want to merge things, the next thing that we'll cover in the next chapter is some painting and sculpting techniques, how to make painterly sculpts and sculptural paintings, and that's going to also be useful for the duplicates tweak.